Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. We're joined today by Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck. But before I turn it over to the Lieutenant Governor, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the unceded lands of the Puget Sound Salish people, from whom this land was forcibly removed by federal accession through the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854, and who continue to steward this land today. I pause and honor their culture, history, and identity, and acknowledge their socio-political reality. I honor their ancestors and their current elders. Wherever you are today, I invite you to pause and acknowledge the people whose land you are on and be inspired by their endurance and strength. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we're joined by Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck. The Lieutenant Governor is able to join us today until about 12:25, when he will have to leave to preside over the Senate pro forma session that begins at 12:30. As usual, we will put everyone on mute, and you can raise your hand or put your question in the chat, and Yvonne will either call on you or ask the question on your behalf. With that said, I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck.
Thank you, Josh. I'm very grateful. I'm the one who's grateful for the chance to be here today for several reasons, some of which you might not imagine, but to begin with, it's a bit personal because you see, it was Governor Booth Gardner who created the Distinguished Managers Award, and I had the incredible honor to serve in his administration as his chief of staff below those many years ago, and it was an incredibly transformative experience in my life. Although I have to admit that this week it's a little bittersweet because it was 8 years ago Monday that Booth passed after his very long struggle with Parkinson's. You know, a lot of people have often described Booth as the best manager we have ever had as governor. I don't know if there's any objective way to measure that, but here's what I know about him. He hired great people, maybe present company notably accepted. He hired great people, and then he let them do their job. And I think that is a lot of why he is credited as he is. Serving as a part of that grew me beyond measure and gave me lots of reasons for joy. I remember well serving on the committee to choose the awardees, and frankly, just what an incredible thrill it was to read through what it is that they had done, their contributions, their innovations, their sacrifices, and there were just pages and pages of these incredible stories that were uplifting beyond measure. And I can remember well on at least one occasion standing in for Booth because he was out of state to actually preside over the ceremony, which was held over at the mansion at the time, and how uplifting that was. And I absolutely remember being at Safeway in Tumwater one time, years after that, and I was approached by someone who told me how much it meant to him that he had received his Distinguished Managers Award at that event that I stood in for Booth was, and how frankly touched I was by that. But there's another reason why I'm grateful to be here today, and it is the chance to say thank you for all you do in service to your state and our state citizens. You know, I've long said that the two most challenging things in life outside of personal business are, number one, starting a business and building it to success, and number two, managing in the public sector. Now, I know a little bit about both. Here's what I know about the former. It's hard. It's very hard. I've started businesses from scratch, and it's unbelievably difficult. But here's the thing. When you do that, you've got such a simple, elegant, straightforward measure of whether or not you're succeeding. And that's the number in the bottom right-hand corner of your balance sheet. Are you making a profit or not? Or are you making progress toward a profit? That's pretty much it. But think about what you all have to do day in and day out, managing in the public sector. You have to manage to several different and sometimes conflicting values. You have a lot of lower right-hand corners to your, figuratively speaking, balance sheet. There is no single measure of success usually in the public. And there are a multitude of ways, and they often work against one another. And frankly, that's why I so admire your work and the outstanding manner in which you do it. So if I may offer a bit of an observation before we get into questions and answers, The last 40 years, I think, has been particularly hard on the public sector, and by extension, civil servants such as yourselves. I'll be very direct here. Decades ago, we had a president who propagated the notion that government was bad. He had a running joke, and it was one of the biggest lies ever told is, I'm from the government, I'm just here to help you. And he repeated over and over again, government is the problem. And frankly, that point of view kind of took some root in our culture. And a good segment of the public has come to believe it. And if you believe that, well, why have any government at all? And of course, the problem is it isn't true. And in fact, it's dangerous. The list of things that the private sector will never do or never do well is very long. It's everything from Social Security to transportation systems, national defense and schools, and a humane social safety net and environmental protection to protect our air and our water. They will never do those things well. So right now, to put this in current or contemporary context, I think we're all being kind of tested. Government's being tested, especially with the new Federal Relief Act. We're about to be tested even more. And basically, the question is, can local and state and the federal government pull all this off? Can it take this huge amount of new money for relief and assistance and spend it well and efficiently? And most importantly, because this is what matters, will people see and feel that government is making a positive difference in their lives? As they say, TBD, to be determined. But I'm betting on you. Thanks again for having me. Let's talk. Or not. Okay, well, it was nice being with you today.
I have a quick question for you. So you talked a little bit about the struggles and challenges of being a public servant and some of the kind of jest that has been thrust upon being a government employee. So can you talk about, why you chose public service as a career? You were in it, then you left, then you came back. Can you kind of talk about what drove you to public service?
Not without embarrassing myself, but at my age, I don't mind. The actual genesis of my interest in public service, especially elective office, was the third grade. And an amazing thing that transformed my life happened in January of 1961. I was a third grader. And my teacher did something that completely blew my mind. She wheeled a television into the classroom. Now, mind you, in 1961, and I lived in a rural area, probably close to half my friends didn't even have televisions yet. And she did so that we could watch the inauguration of John Fitzgerald Kennedy as President of the United States. And I watched that, and for some reason, it was like, yeah, I want to do something like that. And began a career of intermittent public service. I have run for public office many times. Obviously, I served in the State House and I served in the United States Congress, and now I have the privilege to be your Lieutenant Governor. Every time I run for anything, I always get asked the same question by a lot of people, and it's the right question. It's absolutely the right question. It is, why are you doing this? And there's only one right answer. I hate to be overly simplistic, but there's only one right answer, and that is to make a difference in people's lives. And Josh, that's why I do it.
Thank you.
I'm fielding other questions if anybody wants to put them in the chat, but absent anybody else, I'll start with another one. Lieutenant Heck, how establishing integrity in the key is a key ingredient to public trust of government. How can we do that best? How do we best establish integrity and show that?
Well, thank you for the question. So just like our system of government, our system of management needs to be based on values. And that's a key value. And they don't appear magically, and they don't exist in the air. They exist as a consequence of an appropriate regulatory and legal construct which emphasizes and incentivizes them. And they occur because we speak them, we advocate for them, we train for them, we remind ourselves of them. We're struggling with that a little bit, frankly, in this democracy right now, not just in America, but throughout the world. And if I may use this as an analogy, because I think it's so important, I believe that one of the biggest threats to liberal democracies, which I'll define in a second, worldwide, is the rise of authoritarianism. And we've seen that everywhere, where people come to power on the basis of some democratic process, but they slowly chip away at it, because ultimately what comes to matter is that they keep power and expand their power. And along the way, there's some common behaviors like creating the other, like denigrating a free press, and increasingly of late, creating a network of people who financially benefit greatly from your continued occupancy of office. That's not what liberal democracies, lowercase d, are about. Liberal democracies are about the rule of law, not the whim of personality or the cult of personality, about individual rights. And in our country, these are enshrined in the first 10 amendments to our founding document. They're about free, fair, open elections conducted with integrity. And they're about the peaceful transfer of power. You get in a campaign, and I've won some and I've lost some, and you compete as fiercely as you can within the law. And when you lose, you acknowledge it. Those are the underpinning values of liberal democracies. And I would argue that the value of conducting oneself with integrity is an important part of the management of state government. You know, I had a friend that I served with in the Garden administration named Dick Thompson. He had a spectacular career. He had been Secretary of DSHS. He went on to be the AD at University of Washington, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Dick was really a management guru, and he taught a lot of courses in it. And he always said one thing I've never forgotten. For those of us who held public office and our job was to promulgate, propose, and enact policy, he would always remind us, without implementation, there is no policy. And so you are a natural extension of this democratic process, and how you undertake that is important to this process overall, and that you do it with integrity is what enables us to have confidence in it all.
Thank you. Thank you. Cindy Baugh has a question. I'd love for her to be able to ask that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really curious to know your ideas of how we state government could demonstrate the benefits of the COVID dollars that come into our state.
Cindy, you were fading in and out. I hope that if you just lean into the mic, I can get it all.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm interested to know your ideas on how state government could demonstrate the benefits of the COVID dollars coming into our state.
Well, first things first, Cindy, let's make sure we get it out the door efficiently and competently to the people who need it. It is as much a management task as it is anything. And then, frankly, I'm old school. We got to sell it. Books have been written about how President Obama failed to sell ACA. You can argue whether or not that would have made the difference, but you can't argue that he didn't sell it very aggressively. And you see now the difference in the Biden administration. They're out selling the relief package. We got to tell people. We have to make sure they understand where these dollars came from and what they're intended to do and how it is that it can make a difference in their lives. And we need to make sure that the public understands that. And we start in a great place. We have over 75% of the public supports the Relief Act. Let's just keep it up. We cannot rest on our laurels. Politicians do that all the time. Frankly, because I think it's a prerequisite to become a politician, you have to be profoundly ADD. I am, by the way. And so we're always on to the next thing. But there is no policy without implementation. You got to pound it, pound it, pound it. You didn't know you were getting into sales, Cindy, but you are.
Good. That's good. Thank you.
And we'll take a question from Scott Robinson, RCO.
I see Chris Liu on this. Chris, are we going to spend all day together? Or am I going to go over to the rostrum in a few minutes and turn around and there you're going to be?
I think we're tied to the hip today.
All right. Scott.
Governor, thank you. And thank you for coming to our meeting the other day to celebrate Kayleen. I really appreciate that.
Say again.
Thank you for coming to our meeting the other day to celebrate Kayleen Cottingham.
Oh, my privilege. Talk about exceptional people. Thank you.
Consistently improve your leadership skills. What are you doing on a daily basis or improve your leadership skills?
Well, I think I got the gist of it. You were kind of in and out too, Scott. Of late, I've been kind of focused on kind of the Zen nature of being a politician. I'm going to relate this to your question. Trust me. It's just going to take me a little while to do it. So when I think about Zen, I think about the wisdom and value and sometimes beauty of being able to hold two things simultaneously that are in conflict with one another. And to be able to sort through that. And I think about how, as a politician, you run for office and your basic message is, let's say I was running against you, Scott. My basic message is, I'm way better than him. I'm the best person for this office. And then the necessity, in order to be effective, once elected, to understand you don't have all the answers and to stay open. And I'm reading a terrific book right now from a psychologist at the Wharton School of Business who calls this zone humble confidence. You can be overly confident, in which case you close your mind to the things you need to learn and that help you grow. Or you can be overly humble, in which case you just don't have self-confidence to get things done. It's a very Zen-like thing, right, Scott? So I am always looking for the humble confidence zone. I think my staff would tell you a little bit more of the humility part of that, but I'm always looking for it. And if you ask me what I think the most important thing to grow is hitting the zone of humble confidence so that you have the self-confidence to be open to change your mind, but you also have the confidence to proceed and advocate if you have a conviction that you feel good about.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
This moment of Zen brought to you not by Trevor Noah, but by Denny Heck.
Very good. Thank you.
And we have Danella Bremer from WSDOT.
Whom I can't hear at all. Danella. Are you muted?
We can come back. And we'll start with Martha and come right back, Danella, while you get unmuted. Martha Hankins.
Hi, yes, I was just wondering what kinds of things, what would you tell third graders today? What do you tell third graders today?
Mostly when I get in front of third graders, I like to do the performance that I love best. And now, mind you, I'm a performance ham. I was a musician growing up. Politicians are fundamentally performance artists. I loved it so much. I wrote a one-man play and performed it all over the Pacific Northwest here about 13 years ago. And when I get in front of a group of third graders, let me tell you, Martha, it's all about green eggs and ham. I suspect, however, that your question was, what do I tell them about government and politics? And that's really idiosyncratic. It would require, I can't answer that because it requires me having a conversation with the classroom teacher about what he or she has done and prepared them. Where you have to meet them where they are, like all things, right? And I've been in front of third graders who ask questions that would put seniors in high school to shame because they were so sophisticated. And on the other hand, I've talked to third graders who didn't know what day of the week it was. Those of us with children or grandchildren know what we speak.
And Darrow Brown.
Hello, Lieutenant Governor. I'm Darrow. I'm the director of the Washington State EAP. So I have a question related to, I guess I started it in the chat with the pandemic. The pandemic has, at least in the moment, changed the way we work. And then it struck me that the pandemic really encompassed, yes, COVID-19, wildfires, George Floyd protests. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that happened this year. And I think a lot of those things have meant some changes in the way we work, particularly the COVID-19 pandemic. And I wondered, if you could share your thoughts on what the future means for the challenges, leaders, managers, directors, et cetera, what we might face in this time of transformation.
Well, it's interesting. Darrow, that was really cool because you used three examples that I think are really profound, but kind of different in some ways, right? You could look at the wildfires and say, there's really not a lot of doubt that climate change was a major contributor to the underlying conditions that caused that. So, better deal with climate change, which I've been saying for years. You could look at the George Floyd murder, and I'll tell you how I'm beginning to view it. This has opened a door that my entire life I had hoped would be open. I can tell you that standing up in front of the state Senate and watching, for example, police reform bill after police reform bill pass and various measures related to equity pass says to me that we are taking the great stain more seriously than we have in my life. And at least, and I don't want to engage in hyperbole, certainly since the 60s and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. It's not true at the federal level, but I can tell you at the state level, we're going to make a ton of progress this year as a consequence of that tragedy. I think the key is maximize it. We need to take advantage, tragedy born or not, of this opportunity to do what we should have done a long time ago. The pandemic, I think it's TBD, Darrow. I don't think there's any question but that we're not going to go back entirely to the same circumstance. My daughter-in-law is a mid-level manager in state government, and the other night at dinner, I asked her, "What do you think?" And she's got like 15 people work for her. I said, "Do they all want to come back? Do they want to come back part-time?" Because they're beginning to talk about this. I'm sure you all are leading these conversations now. And it's pretty clear to me we're not going back to everybody going in 5 days a week. What short of that we're going to do, I don't think is clear yet. And I'm always asking people what they think is going to happen and where they think that's going. But I don't really think we fully know yet. I don't know if that was responsive to your very, very interesting question, but thank you for asking it.
Thank you.
We are at 12:25, and I want to be super respectful of getting our Lieutenant Governor to his next meeting. So I think, do we have time for another question, or does that end?
Does anybody have a quick one?
We have so many.
All right. Well, listen, if I may conclude, thank you again. I hope you'll invite me back when maybe I can stay longer. That was a little self-serving to invite myself back, but thank you so very much for having me. But more importantly, as I said, I am very grateful for the job you all do every day on behalf of our citizens. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to go bang the gavel.
Thank you.